And speaking of some of the negatives of socialism, what do you think of young people on campus today who are being fed and indoctrinated, really, with this socialistic mentality? What do you think is so appealing about socialism to them?
I think for what I was reading, some of the things that appeals is like this idea of free education, free healthcare, free fill the blank. And once again, it sounds nice, right? But if we were to think where those things come from, someone needs to be working for them. Now, it will be nice for, especially in the United States, I think education is extremely, extremely expensive. And many people want to go ahead and nowadays achieve high education because there is this idea that if you go to college, then you will have more opportunities, which sometimes it can be true, but sometimes it may not. And so if you have this idea, like you go ahead and have to pay a lot of money to go to school versus free, then of course you're going to want to go with free, right? Like, I want free too, but let's go ahead and think, where is that coming from? Because nothing is free, except maybe the air that we breathe. You know, by the grace of God, or our vision, we're able to see or hear. But the rest of things are like, they cost money or they come from somewhere. So.
Yeah, I do agree with that, where people would desire that mentality, or have that mentality of, oh, well, if this is an option, of having a free education as an option, that's fantastic. But there's multiple layers behind having a free education, for example, like you brought up, that people never talk about. They never talk about the running of a facility that they need to go to in order to get instruction. They don't talk about wages or anything else that would be a layer of the production of education. They just put a label of free on it, and that, I do believe that is one area, Monica, I do agree, where young people especially, would be incentivized to think that way. So how about you, Garrett? What are you seeing? What do you feel?
You know, looking at this also, again, comparing history to today, you know, I think this kind of relates to what Monica just said in terms of free. You know, people think, we just pay more taxes, you know, everything will be taken care of. You know, but do you really want to be taxed 80%? I mean, how can you live off that? You know, it was Winston Churchill who said, you know, can a nation tax themselves into prosperity? At the same time, can a man stand in a bucket and lift himself up by the handle? So, you know, it was in the mid 60s, really popular old radio show host Paul Harvey, one of my favorites. He gave a speech called Freedom to Chains. And in this, you know, he said, any nation that has willingly taxed its people more than 25% has seen a decline. You know, they decay morally, socially, economically, simultaneously. And, you know, he also, in the same speech, it's near the beginning, he says, you know, at Runnymede, the Magna Carta was handed to King John on the end of a sword, denying the federal government, or the royal government rather, the right to unlimited taxation. But yet, and I'm looking at this from an American perspective, it was us, the American people, to be the first in the world to willingly sacrifice our right to not get the life taxed out of us. And we did this through an innocent sounding constitutional amendment. I believe it was the 16th. You know, and it just, it's truly mind-boggling.
Yeah, I absolutely echo what you just said about that 80% mark of taxation here in Canada. I can speak for myself. About 60% of my income is taxed, and there's no incentive, because really I'm working for the government at this point. I'm a slave of the state, and most people don't see that anymore. I've noticed most people want to give more and more money to the government, and that's very concerning for me. So I appreciate you bringing that up, Garrett. How about you, Ruxandra? Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, those are amazing points, but I think when a lot of young people, let's say they support the idea of socialism and they think that's the best option there is, unfortunately, and I don't say it from a mean spirit, it shows a lot of ignorance because they don't understand the economic mechanisms behind it. They don't understand what that means in the long term. However, what I think it's more appealing than the economy of socialism, because that's kind of selling you an image of comfort and just welfare, is the social rhetoric. And that's maybe the main reason why the Bolshevik Revolution was so successful. We know that it was also by means of violence and a lot of atrocities were committed, but the socialist rhetoric knew how to emphasize the real human struggles, like poverty, exploitation by the state or the the bourgeoisie, the regime, or the Tsar in Russia, power abuse, and this rings a bell in almost everybody. And now, especially in the United States and Western Europe, which are very wealthy, the wealthiest states in the world, the wealthiest states in history. Just because you don't know, you're not that interested in history anymore, which is one of the greatest problems we face as humans today. And I'm sorry for the birds in the background, the windows are open. It's just that they don't know what happened yesterday. So they don't know exactly what Garrett said. Everything, all socialist systems, they failed.
Yeah.
Based on their own premises.
Right.